Hey everyone, this is an Amalgia video for Animal Crossing New Horizons on the Nintendo Switch, and today we're going to be talking about seasonal snowflakes and the snow people you can build in town. When snow covers the ground, snowflakes will waft through the air and you can catch them with your bug net like you have in the other seasonal events. What's different this time is that every real-life day that you log into the game, there will be 2 snowballs on the ground somewhere in your town. Snowballs start out very small, and you kick them around in order to make them grow larger. After around 12 kicks or so, the snowballs grow large enough where you can push them with your hands. Although the number does change sometimes if dung beetles have been pushing the snowballs in your town around. Also, I find that of the 2 snowballs, one is usually larger than the other, and so it may take less kicks in order to get it to the point where you could push it around. These snowballs are used to make snow people in your town, and you only get 1 shot per day if you complete a snow person. Unlike the previous Animal Crossing game, where you used to make snow families based on the size of the snowballs, this game only has 1 type, and they're all referred to as snowboys. Of the snowboys, there are 2 types, perfect and imperfect, and you always want to shoot for crafting a perfect snowboy. The reason is that in addition to all the other snowflakes floating around town, the only way to get an item called large snowflake is to craft perfect snowboys. Also, when the snowboy is perfectly crafted, it will grant you a new DIY you don't have yet from the Frozen series. The only exception to this is when you craft your first snowboy. The exception might also extend to the second snowboy you make, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, if you craft an imperfect snowboy on your first try, it will give you a large snowflake and a new DIY as a reward. The freebies won't last forever though, and you always want to shoot for perfection. So, what separates the perfect from the imperfect? It's all about having the right snowball proportions. When I say proportions matter, I mean the size of the snowballs don't necessarily matter as long as the top snowball and the bottom one are in the correct sense of scale with each other. Here's a look at some of the correct proportions when the snowballs are on the ground. As you can see, one snowball is smaller than the other, and the smaller snowball always needs to be pushed on top of the larger one to become the head. Unfortunately, even with the right proportions, this process is a little trickier than it sounds. First, both snowballs need to be large enough to be able to be pushed around. I have not been able to build a snow person with snowballs that are still small enough to be kicked. Secondly, if snowballs are too close to a rock, a tree, or a building, or any other object in your town, they may not build properly and may just keep rolling around until you move them to a clean spot. This can really be a problem if you already have your snowballs in the perfect proportions you need them to, but then they're too close to something to assemble. Then when you're moving them around, you may accidentally mess up your proportions in trying to get them to the right place. Something else to keep in mind is that it is actually possible to assemble a snowboy on a flower. The problem is that the second the snowboy is created, the flower beneath it is destroyed. So just be careful when you're rolling the snowballs around and remember that it's better to do it in a wide open space if you have access to it. So, what do you do if the snowballs in your town spawn in a really bad place and you want to get them somewhere else? To answer that, let's talk about how you destroy a snowball. Snowballs can be destroyed if you roll them directly into a tree or other obstacle, into a body of water, or if you kick them off a cliff. If a snowball breaks, all you need to do to bring it back is to zone. You can zone into nooks, your house, a villager's house, it doesn't matter, they all work. If only one snowball is broken, then the other usually remains and at the size you rolled it to. Once you zone back out, there should be a new small snowball backed by the original one that you left behind. That's how to bring snowballs back, and if you want to relocate them, just break both of them and zone, and they should reappear in a new location. This video is going up a little late for Southern Hemisphere, so I'm having a little trouble remembering, but I do think that logging out of the game and logging back in also was a way to shuffle the snowball locations. One more technical aspect to rolling snowballs that Nintendo intended was if snowballs are too far apart from each other in size, they can't be stacked on one another. While this was mostly intended to be a helpful thing, it can cause a few problems. The range is very narrow, and if one of the snowballs is even slightly out of proportion, then it will not allow them to stack in a lot of cases. This can lead to situations where you have 2 snowballs that you think are perfectly proportioned, and then you're trying to stack them on one another, but they won't go together. Anyway, with the technical aspects out of the way, let's talk about the rewards. So, during the winter season, there's a set of DIYs that come from the Snowboys and some that come from balloons that fly over your town. First, let's go over the DIY items that come from balloons. All of the seasonal balloon items only cost normal snowflakes to build and do not require large snowflakes. First up is the snowflake wreath. It costs 4 normal snowflakes. You also get this from Isabelle at the beginning of the season, but repeats will drop out of balloons. Next up is the snowflake pochette. It costs 6 snowflakes. Then we have the iceberg wall, which costs 10 snowflakes, and the iceberg flooring, which also costs 10 snowflakes. There's also a ski slope flooring, which costs 8 snowflakes, and a ski slope wall that costs another 8 snowflakes. The last item you get out of balloons is the snowflake wall, and for some reason it does not have a corresponding flooring. Now let's move on to the DIYs and rewards you get from building perfect snowboys. This whole set is pretty cool, and I highly recommend you go after it despite how annoying it is to make perfect snow people. First up, we have the frozen arch. It costs 1 large snowflake and 10 regular snowflakes. Then we have a frozen bed. It costs 1 large and 10 smalls to make. I don't know why they thought making the bedding brown was a good idea, but fortunately this piece is customizable like many of the other pieces that come from the Snowpeople. Next up is the frozen chair. It costs 1 large and 3 small, and it's very easy to make. Now for the frozen counter. It costs 1 large and 5 small to make. It counts as a table, even though it already has a glass and a bottle on it. The frozen partition costs 1 large and 6 small to make, and it's just a wall made of ice blocks. Then we have the frozen pillar. It costs 1 large and 3 small to make. It being cheap to create is good because you're probably going to need multiple of them for your sense of aesthetics. Next up is the frozen sculpture. It costs 1 large and 4 small to make, and it's just a giant bear, which is fantastic because who wouldn't want a giant bear ice sculpture watching over them while they're sleeping? Moving on, the frozen table is 1 large and 8 small. This table is much larger than the counter, and you can place more furnishings on top, which makes it very useful. Next, we have the frozen treat set. It's 1 large snowflake and 1 small snowflake, and it's just a tabletop item of 2 popsicles. Now let's talk about the frozen tree. It's 1 large snowflake and 8 smalls. It's kind of odd looking, but its large size could make it a centerpiece in your room if you so desired. Here we have the ice flooring. It costs 1 large and 8 small, and it really gives your house that ice palace feel when you put it on the floor. Paired with it is the ice wall, and it costs 1 large snowflake and 8 smalls. The wallpaper naturally has arched pillars built into it, so it's very regal looking. The Snowpeople can give you some other items too, like an ice wand that costs 1 large snowflake and 3 star fragments. You can also get a 3-tiered snow person, which costs 1 large, 6 small, and 2 tree branches. And last, but certainly not least, is this goofy snow person head. It costs 1 large and 5 small. Also, I mentioned before that many of these items are customizable, so I'm going to go through in a minute and show you a lot of the customizable options and colors you can get out of this set. Before I do, I just wanted to quickly remind you that if you found any of the Amalgia videos helpful, please subscribe. Also, if you have the time, please visit amalgia.com. There's free fiction reads, blog reads, video game reviews, and even some books you can buy. I'll put a link to it in the description. Your support helps me to have the time to do things like this, and I really appreciate it. And now for the customizable colors. As you can see, the ice set has a number of unique colorations that the game counts as illumination. It's a very fun set to play around with in the customized screen. Fortunately, not only can the frozen bed change the outer color of its ice, but you can also change the color of the bedding. One of them being a white snow-like bedding that matches the set. Here's the frozen counter set. You can even see a little bottle in the bottom, stashed behind. The frozen sculpture comes in the same set of colors, but who wouldn't want to be able to customize your giant ice bear? The frozen pillar is more of the same, but it gives off some bright neon vibes. The 3-tiered snow person is also customizable in 4 colors that changes its face. Then we have the frozen treat set. It's a little hard to see in the video, but they actually put a lot of detail into these other colorations, especially the chocolate mint. Here's a look at the frozen table colors. Now the frozen chair. The frozen tree. And the last one I have footage of is the frozen partition. And here's what the uncustomized pieces look like staged in your home. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.